Hello, I'm Paul Peterson. Today, a very special edition of Aging in LA. We are going to honor real people today who have reached a remarkable milestone. They are 100 years of age, some more than that. They are among the 70,000 Americans who hold the distinction of being centenarians, a group now believed to be the fastest growing population group of Americans. A group that is expected to reach 834,000 people, maybe even 1 million, by the year 2050. Centenarians, for obvious reasons, are being intensively studied for the clues they may offer about aging. And we'll discuss that on our program today. So please stay tuned for Aging in LA. As I mentioned earlier, there are now 70,000 Americans who are 100 years of age or older. In the year 2011, when the baby boomers start turning 65, the total number of centenarians is expected to be over 125,000. Will you be one of them? What about your children in 2050? When there may be almost 1 million persons in the United States 100 years of age or older. You know, the average U.S. life expectancy has been increasing for more than 100 years, and it hit a record high in 2004, 80.4 years for women and 75.2 years for men. How long can this go on? Scientists are not sure if we will ever be able to expand human life to 100 years or beyond for most people, not just the lucky few favored by genes and environment. We do know that the Social Security Administration extended the life expectancy tables all the way up to 119 years old in 2005. In the last 4 decades, the number of people reaching 100 has increased almost tenfold, so that now 1 in 50 women and 1 in 200 men reach that age. Today we will discuss the impact of this fastest growing segment of the American population. Our guest in the first half of our program, Dr. Stephen Coles, is co-founder and director of the Los Angeles Gerontology Research Group, an organization that holds seminars on possible intervention to the aging process. Please welcome Dr. Coles. Thank you so much for joining us. What exciting new territory this is, 100 years plus.
We consider in our business people who are merely centenarians to be youngsters.
Merely 100.
Because
yes.
We don't even start studying these people until they reach 110.
Really? Now, what's the term for a person 110? Is this the magical supercentenarian?
That's the magical supercentenarian.
Wow. And now the population group is large enough to actually be studied?
Well, we study it because it's small enough for us to study.
Well, that's true.
You know, the statistics and the demographics that you gave earlier for centenarians makes the numbers overwhelming for a volunteer organization like ours. We have maybe 40 people worldwide who are investigating the claims of supercentenarians, and if we lowered our threshold down toward 100, there wouldn't be enough people to study them and carefully identify their birth records, you know, which are written, of course, in the original native language where they were born.
I'll be darned.
So we need people in each country who are native speakers. You know, I could probably make do if it were a birth certificate in Italian or French or Portuguese or Spanish and even Russian. But if it's Swedish, I don't even know the names of the months of the years. So we need to have a native speaker to translate for us in each of those countries, and who can be on the computer on a regular basis, because it's the internet that has made this kind of discussion possible in the last few years.
Well, I must ask, what might this group tell us about the aging process? What is there to be discovered?
Well, we need to know what it is that they share in common. And I'm sad to report that of the maybe 8 or 9 supercentenarians that I've interviewed here in California, there's very little in common.
Really?
I mean, you might ask, well, what's your secret? And they all have an answer for you.
Right.
I mean, they speak English here in California. And why don't you just ask them and they'll tell you? Well, the problem is that they give contradictory answers.
I'll see that, you know. Yeah, I never smoked and drank. Oh, yeah, I had 3 packs of cigarettes a day. I can see that happening. Very funny. Now, this group, dominated by women more than men?
90% are women.
See that? Boy, guys are really getting shafted here. This is, what is the difference there?
We have no scientific explanation for why women have this enormous advantage. No, we thought at one time that it had to do with their hormones, with the estrogen and progesterone that they have a lot of compared to men, who are, of course, the dominant hormone being testosterone.
Of course, yes.
Although women have a certain percentage of that too, and that's what controls libido in everyone.
Right.
It turns out that it's probably not the hormones. It's not the estrogen. Because these women have been postmenopausal with virtually no estrogen for decades before they got to be supercentenarians. And what we're thinking now is that it has more to do with their chromosomes, because all women have 2 XX chromosomes, whereas men have XY. And the Y chromosome is tiny. And it turns out that women are actually, in every cell in their body, a mosaic, a chimera of one or the other of their X chromosomes. And this may give them a genetic advantage that we just don't understand yet.
Fascinating, worthy of study, because it's almost counterintuitive given the risks of childbirth that women have. And
but it is intuitive when you consider the risk of childbirth in previous centuries, which was before C-sections were invented, cesarean sections. Many women died in childbirth, and many children died in childbirth. But just consider the mothers for a moment. If you want to equilibrate men and women in their childbearing years, and you're losing lots of women, then you would want to give women some advantage to compensate for that. And now that everyone pretty much doesn't die in childbirth, I mean, my specialty is obstetrics, and so practically no one delivers with a cause of death being dystocia or some other condition that would have killed these women in previous centuries. Today, that advantage is being pushed through into the older years, and maybe that's the reason why these women are living so long compared to men. But it's not a scientific investigation where you can do a controlled clinical trial. And we don't have any good animal models to explain it either.
Yeah, that's for sure. Now, is there sort of a threshold where the aging process sort of goes into suspense and they don't age, at least outwardly, for a long stretch of time? Are we seeing that?
Important that you should mention that, because that is one of the characteristics that they share in common. They all appear to be youthful well into their 80s and 90s and even 100s.
Wow.
I mean, if you look at pictures of Jeanne Calment, who was the French woman who died in 1997 at the age of 122, the oldest documented supercentenarian in history, the Guinness Book of Records holder, so to speak.
I understand.
When she was 105, she looked pretty good. She was still walking around, and it wasn't until she was 118 when she started to look frail and was confined to a wheelchair and became blind. But she smoked until she was 100. So,
well, you know those French women.
Yes. and I don't know how much she drank, but she did outlive all her relatives. And she has an amazing story to tell, and in fact that biography has been documented in a book that's now translated into English, and you can check it on Amazon or on Google to find out how to learn more about the life of Jeanne Calment. But she's just one example of the supercentenarians who remain healthy until very advanced ages, even when they're 105.
It's just so astonishing to consider. I mean, I'm thinking to myself, another 40 years before I even get into the first of these categories. Is there an upper limit? Is there like some cellular speed of light barrier that we're not going to be able to overcome?
That may be true, but I need to point out an important observation that we've made about these people, which is that they don't die of the conventional chronic diseases that are typically written on death certificates today for the ordinary people of our population. So where the life expectancy that you mentioned was in our 80s, they die of other things. So
things
somehow, well, just they escape from heart disease, which was the topic of your last presentation.
Right.
They escape from cancer. They escape from Alzheimer's disease. They escape from stroke. They escape from diabetes mellitus. And that must be in their genes. Wow. So they've had a lucky combination of genes that explains to some extent why they have managed to live so long. But then why don't they keep on living still longer? And why do they die when they do? And that's where my scientific hat got put on instead of just being a physician, so that I can learn more about the true causes of death in this ultimate age category. And what gets written on the death certificate is really not an explanation, because it might say something like, Mrs. Smith died of congestive heart failure. But that begs the question of why didn't she have it earlier?
Right, yes it would.
Why did she have it when she did? And so because I'm affiliated with a pathology department at the UCLA David Geffen School of Medicine, have to do an autopsy of these really old people when they die to figure out the diagnosis in a more precise manner. And you're, I'm sure, in your audience very much aware that you don't normally do autopsies unless there is a suspicious cause of death.
Yes.
Like an accident or a shooting or a stabbing or what have you, in which it's so-called coroner's case. And then a forensic pathologist comes in and gives a very precise definition of the cause of death.
I see.
But we need to know about these people, and one of the steps involved in doing an autopsy before you start is to sign a consent form.
Right.
And this is done by someone who is a next of kin, usually a family member.
Well, if there are any around.
If they haven't outlived these people.
Exactly.
But yes, it turns out that when I talk to the family members, and I've done 4 of these autopsies now, 2 men and 2 women, and one from the San Diego area, a gentleman, a woman from Orange County, a woman from right here in Los Angeles, and another gentleman who was in the Bay Area.
Was there any commonality with these 4?
Yes, there was, and let me explain.
Okay, we're a little short of time.
When I go to sign the consent form, it turns out that they ask for a second opinion. Who is this Dr. Coles who wants to have Aunt Tilly with an autopsy? And usually the family doctor will say, well, Aunt Tilly doesn't need an autopsy. When she dies, we'll know why she is dying. She died of old age. And again, that begs the question. So what did we find? The answer is when we actually get permission to do a scientific investigation of the cause of death of supercentenarians, 3 out of 4 died of exactly the same cause.
Which is?
TTR amyloidosis.
TTR amyloidosis. That is a mouthful, and it is what basically?
It's a protein that is a native protein in the body to transport thyroid hormone that becomes unstable, and it breaks down into component parts that are very sticky, and they clog up the blood vessels. In fact, in all the organs of the body, they infiltrate the lungs and the heart and the kidneys and the liver. Every part of your body gets filled with this stuff that clogs up your blood vessels. Wow. And that's why blood pressure goes up, and that's why the heart is a weak point of failure.
I'll be done. Just really lots to learn here. That was fascinating. Dr. Coles was recently interviewed as part of a CNN story about the oldest living person in California who recently celebrated her 113th birthday. CNN's Dr. Sanjay Gupta paid a visit to Gertrude Baines and generously shared this report with us. This is worth watching.
I didn't smoke and I didn't drink. Work, go home.
Those are words to live by, and she should know. Gertrude Baines is 112 years old, and except for the arthritis in her knee, she's never been seriously sick a day in her life.
I've taken care of myself, that's all.
She belongs to an exclusive group of people over the age of 110, called Super Centenarians, and researchers believe they might be the key to finding the fountain of youth.
These people at every stage of their lives, they look younger, but not only look younger, they function much younger.
So how can we live longer and healthier lives like Gertrude Baines? That's the question the Supercentenarian Research Foundation is trying to answer.
People who live longer primarily live longer because they have genes that protect them from disease. They don't get Alzheimer's, they don't get heart attacks.
The foundation is compiling a database of supercentenarians worldwide, detailing their family history as well as blood and tissue information.
So that we can sample their tissues before they die and get an analysis of their DNA.
That would give us insights into how they're living longer and how we can create products and interventions that would allow the rest of us to live longer.
So what does eventually cause supercentenarians to die? Dr. Stephen Cole has performed several autopsies. He says they die of a substance in their bodies called amyloid that builds up in the veins, causing organ failure.
And then you have total system collapse.
Amyloid builds up in all of us, yet we usually die of something else first. In supercentenarians, the substance doesn't seem to affect them until much later in life. It could be years before the foundation uncovers the clues behind longevity. In the meantime, supercentenarians like Mrs. Baines are happy providing living proof. Dr. Sanjay Gupta, CNN, reporting.
Boy, it's absolutely fascinating stuff. Now, how do you validate the claims of some of these really old people who claim to be from an era where no records may exist? How is that done?
If there are no records, we refuse to validate because a lot of these claims may be spurious, maybe not intentionally fraudulent, but we've even seen fraud on behalf of people in the home country saying that a person was a Guinness Book of Records oldest person in the world when they weren't, and they may have been 10 years younger than they said. Sometimes the fraud was perpetrated at a very young age when somebody was trying to get out of military service.
Well, I can actually understand that because all of my sisters now are younger than me, all of them. Yeah, I can see that a deception back in 1820 or 1920 has consequences.
So we like to go and look at census records for American citizens, and we look at marriage certificates and photo ID, like a driver's license, a passport, and a baptismal certificate or a birth certificate if there is one. And that 3 independent document set is what we use to do the validation.
I got you. Well, I wish you well in this research because I just get that sense they have something to tell us. Thank you so much for joining us. It's time for a short break, and we want to thank Dr. Coles, co-founder and director of the Los Angeles Gerontology Research Group. When we return, we will be joined by Juliet Wong, coordinator of the Los Angeles Department of Aging's Centenarian program. So you stay tuned for Aging in LA.
Hey, buddy! Don't you know you should never leave a cooking pan unattended? And a working smoke detector can warn you of a fire. Like the one behind me. My hero!
Next time, listen to the ball. Have a smoke detector and a fire extinguisher that work.
How'd you know?
The ball called.
Welcome back to Aging in LA. Our very special topic on the program today is Centenarians, Now and Beyond. Joining us in the second part of our program, someone who has contributed greatly to the research and production of this show, Aging in LA, Juliet Wong. She was recently named coordinator of the City of Los Angeles Department of Aging's Centenarians program, and we welcome her to Aging in LA. Juliet, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Paul.
Let's get a handle on just how exclusive this club is of super centenarians.
Well, certainly. Although by 2050 we'll have maybe 100 centenarians, super centenarians, right now, to this day, we have 83 worldwide, 33 in the U.S., and according to Dr. Coles, 2 in California. And as we saw, Ms. Gertrude Baines is one of the 2 we have right here in Los Angeles. So we are very, very lucky to have her with us.
Wow, it's just amazing. Now, tell me a bit about the Centenarian project. What's that about, and how can we help?
Well, the Centenarian program in the city of Los Angeles began in 2003, initiated by council member Bernard Parks, once he became a council member. And so from there, we developed a city program to recognize the city centenarians specifically. Around the world, centenarians are recognized in some way. In Japan, on the 100th birthday of a person, they receive a silver cup and a certificate from the Prime Minister.
Wow.
And in the UK and the Commonwealth, the Queen of England sends a telegram. After 105, she sends a telegram every year on every birthday. So in the city of LA, we wanted to do something, and so we have the Centenarian program. Caregivers, loved ones, and friends, any of them can apply for this program. It's a very easy application to just give information about their loved one and a little part for a little biography. And we work with the local council district and mayor's office to produce a beautiful certificate through City Hall. And
this is really a nice idea. It is.
It certainly is.
So I don't forget, do they contact you directly, Juliet, at the Department of Aging?
They may. We do have our application on our website, www.lacity.org/DOA.
DOA, right, for Department of Aging.
Department of Aging. It is in our download section there, but they can call me at 213-252-4000, and I'd be more than happy to fax an application.
Right. Well, that's really a good idea. I mean, it's just even the notion that someone makes it to 100. It's amazing, although I guess over time, as Dr. Coles pointed out to us, it's going to become less so because there's going to be so darn many of them.
With the improvements of healthcare and as people take better care of themselves, but part of it being genetic as part of the factor. But what's amazing also is in our program we want to also acknowledge and celebrate the longevity and life experiences of these individuals because they've lived through so many eras, so many social movements, so many 18 presidents, 7 wars, 2 of those world wars, one of them a Cold War.
Wow.
It's just amazing what they've seen, and to be able to talk with them and listen to them or their loved one, and you know, if they're still able to share what they've gone through in their lives is truly, I'm always amazed at any elder, but especially a centenarian.
Yeah, well, this is worthy of videography and getting the stories down because sure,
Definitely.
the memories of people who actually have been there are so different than what historians put down on the page.
When they've seen it and experienced it with their own eyes, for instance, the Depression era, they not only grew up with it, they raised their family. This is preceding the greatest generation, the silent generation.
Right.
These are the people who, by World War II, they were almost approaching 40.
Yes.
So in the scope of things, if we're about, you know, in our 30s, 40s now, to think that we may live another 100 years is definitely something to think about.
Wow, it sure is. You know, to start taking better care of yourself.
Definitely.
But I can see this is not an unreasonable expectation. I was reading statistics the other day that a woman who has made it to 50, who has been cancer-free, no breast cancer, no ovarian cancer, has a really good chance of making it to 100.
That's
Can
excellent.
you imagine?
Yeah, it would be wonderful if we could do so in great shape and...
Right. Well, that, of course, is the trick. Because otherwise, we get that wonderful old joke about the man who goes to his doctor and says, "Doctor, if I quit smoking and chasing women and quit drinking, will I live to be 100?" And the doctor says, "Well, it'll feel like it."
Yeah, we want to feel maybe 21 as long as possible.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, they can get that part, but still it is a remarkable chronicle of living history.
Definitely.
And congratulations on being part of this program, because
Thank you.
I think it's really meaningful, and I think it's something that we can all agree is amazing. And thank you so much, Juliet, for coming in to share with us this remarkable facet of our lives. Now, that's all the time we have for today's program. Thanks to our guest in the second half of our program, Juliet Wong, coordinator of the Centenarian program for the Department of Aging. And thanks, Juliet, for all of the hard work you have put into aging in LA in the past. It's been much appreciated by all of us who work here. And thanks to our guest in the first half of Aging in LA, Dr. L. Stephen Coles, co-founder and director of the Los Angeles Gerontology Research Group. For more information on the Centenarian program, contact the Los Angeles Department of Aging at 213-252-4000 or go to www.lacity.org/DOA. I want to share with you one important issue before we close. If we don't have enough healthcare professionals trained in geriatrics for today's older Americans, what about the future, when we will have a much larger number of older Americans? This is a major national policy issue that will affect all of us. So you make sure that you and your elected local and national representatives are knowledgeable about the implications of a rapidly aging society. The Los Angeles Department of Aging produces this program with CityView, Channel 35, so that seniors living in Los Angeles and surrounding communities are well informed on the many issues that face them in everyday life, and also to let you know of the many services that the Department of Aging offers our senior citizens. And we'd like to hear from you with comments on the program, what you like, what you think can be improved, and ideas for future programs. So please give us a call. The number's right there on your screen, 213-252-4088. That's 213-252-4088. Call us with your comments and ideas. We look forward to hearing from you. I'm Paul Peterson for the Los Angeles Department of Aging, the people here at CityView, Channel 35, and all of our guests on Aging in LA. Thanks so much for watching. See you next time.